the biggest issue that you have when you're building something is it really takes you away from being present.
Yep. Yeah.
It really does, right? And that has a cost on your relationships, on your family, on you, you can have on your health. What it really boils down to is how important it is to win and how much you can't really fuck around with it. When I was starting this business, I wanted to do something that I could, I'd be really curious about, I'd be passionate about.
But what lessons or what learnings did you get from number 2 that you've now applied for number 3?
The biggest problem that I had in 2013, and again, one of the toughest things is the go-to-market and the proposition and where do you start from, right? The freedom to make mistakes is absolutely necessary when you're building a company and when you're building a product. It is, it's absolutely, you can't do without it.
Hello, Sokratis. Thanks for coming in.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure. So you've got a business now that's got a run rate of over 9 figures, but back in the day, you studied engineering like all good entrepreneurs. Why?
So I've always had this conviction, determination, hope that I was going to build something of my own that would be, a business of my own, right? And I've always kind of been curious. I've been good at many different things, not amazing in anything. And the thing that kind of drew me the most, but also the thing I've kind of ended up through a process of elimination was engineering. Because, also growing up in Greece, education is very much something you invest in with, an outcome in the end. So it is, medicine, law, it's engineering, it is kind of the hard things like that. And engineering was what drew me. But yeah, it's been a while since I practiced it.
And so much so your daughter doesn't even know that you are an engineer.
She doesn't believe that I am. So she's 4.5. I took her to the Science Museum on Sunday, trying to inspire her. But actually, it's a fun thing to do. And we're going through the different sections, and we went through the engineers, and I said, your dad is an engineer, to which she responded, nah, completely dismissive. I was like, no, I really am. I studied. It's like, no, you're not. And then I don't know how she got there, but it really hit a nerve. She asked me, do your friends at work think you're an engineer? As if she knew that our engineering team, we're a little bit at odds as to how much of an engineer I am. So, but anyway, I'll get around. I haven't dug out my degree certificate just yet, but
You're answering to your daughter. I love it.
100%. Well, she's 100% the CEO and the chairman of the board as well.
Amazing. For her. And obviously, you started with the engineering. Can you tell us, go back right to the beginning and what was your kind of inspiration for getting into the world of startups? Because you've done a number now, right? This is not your first rodeo. And, what got you into the amazing world of entrepreneurship?
So I had this, first I did have actually somebody that did inspire me when I was growing up. That was my mother's brother, who was a software engineer for BMW. So he was the first kind of, a person that was writing software back in the kind of from the 70s and the 80s. And then
back in Greece?
This was actually Munich in the HQ for BMW. So I still have some ring binders, some folders with the pseudocode that they used to write, because they wrote software in assembly. So before you actually compiled anything, you had to make sure that you wrote your code by hand. You checked it with a team of people. You made sure that it would work, because you could not debug it once you deployed it. So my uncle actually wrote that middleware layer that coordinated the factory supply chain and kind of moving parts from BMW.
Quite critical.
It was, yeah. That thing ran for, they built it, they deployed it again because it had no bugs.
You deploy once.
You can't really, at some point I guess they built layers and APIs around that, but you just wouldn't touch that thing, because once you broke it, you couldn't be certain you would fix it. So he was somebody that I remember would bring home Chip magazine. I don't know if you
No.
ever came across that.
And it's not something that sells fries, is it?
It is not. It is actually in semiconductors. And I remember reading there in the sometime in, I don't know, the 90s. It's a long time ago now, isn't it? And there was a prediction that
Hugo probably wasn't even born.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Maybe you were just getting started. My God, yeah. I think we got off on the wrong foot, guys. We have to start again. So I'm kidding. So I remember reading that mobile telephony would be a big thing, and there was an estimation that there would be 80 million phones worldwide by 2000 and something. And again, my uncle would talk to me about the internet and the information superhighway and things like that. And that got me, I always had a curiosity about how things worked, how businesses made money. I never did the whole like lemonade stand or sell videotapes to my classmates or anything like that. I just was a kid, but I was super curious. And I always had this clear plan that I would do engineering, I would focus on telecommunications, I would get a job somewhere, and then I would start my own company. And then that company would be successful. And then, I would figure it out. And it sort of played out like that, to be honest with you. But the first step into startups, to answer the question, was I knew the direction of travel. I knew where I wanted to end up, right? So I came here, I studied engineering, almost went back to Greece, but ended up getting a job at a big, mobile telephony company, one of the biggest at the time, Vodafone. I stayed there for about 3.5 years. And then I was in the global leadership strategy team at Vodafone, kind of on a path to being an exec. But I knew what I wanted to do. So I had seen this advert for a startup that had just raised money from Sequoia. Didn't know who Sequoia were at the time and kind of what they did and all of that.
They're not anyone special.
Nothing special, right? And they had raised a Series F, which was, I didn't know what that meant. And I quit Vodafone and I joined that company because I wanted to see what it was like to be in a small company. The term startup wasn't really as popularized as that was. This is now early 2000s, mid 2000s.
Yeah, because entrepreneurship and startup back then was just, you don't know what you're doing, you're kind of failing, best of luck.
Yeah.
That was quite cool, but back then it was very, very different.
Back then it was just, there was a community that was starting to kind of form. It was a lot more quaint than it is now, a lot smaller, and it was kind of, I think more difficult in a way to get started, but it was, in a sense, a little bit, easier as well to kind of sort of find your footing once you did that. So, yeah, I joined that company. I stayed there for about a year, and then I started my first business.
And so obviously, you've had a few experiences working for someone else, and then you made the switch. You took the decision that most people never go back from, of starting your own thing. Tell us about that first business that you started, and did it work? Did it go anywhere? What was the story behind that?
It did. So again, the hardest thing is to what is it that you're going to build, right? And what is it that you really wanna? I think most people shouldn't do this, by the way. You should not start a company because you want to start a company and because you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to create something. You should build something because you can't really not build it. You are so driven, so possessed about bringing that thing to the world, right?
And can we dig into why that is? Like, why do you think people should not be building companies? Because that's often that's the opposite of advice of a lot of people.
Because I think the time that you're gonna put in, the energy that you're gonna put in, the pain that you're gonna go through, and the probability that you're gonna have of success is just something that is not, again, this is kind of maybe a little bit easier to say now, but the risk that you take in and I don't mean the financial risk, even though you do have an opportunity cost by doing a startup, right? But I'm talking about the fact that the biggest issue that you have when you're building something is it really takes you away from being present.
Yep.
Yeah. It really does, right? And that has a cost on your relationships, on your family, on you can have on your health. So when you put that, you combine that with the fact that actually, mathematically speaking, you are painfully aware that this thing is just not going to be successful. You need to start with that premise unless you are, So you have to be a little bit insane because you know that this thing is not most likely going to work. But I'm utterly convinced that I'm going to figure out how to make it work, right? And you have to be committed. You have to push through. And you see a lot of people that spend, the most productive parts of their lives trying to get traction, and then looking back a decade or two later and thinking maybe how they should have spent their time. So I would not, if again my daughter was to grow up, become an engineer, and who knows what by the time she grows up, and she wanted to build her own company, I would try to steer her away from that. And actually, I wouldn't try to do anything, right? I would support her whatever she wanted to do. But I think doing something that you have visibility, that compounds, that you keep growing, you shouldn't, dismiss that. I'm not suggesting people should, go follow a corporate career, the professional, but whatever that would be, because that has its own other risks, but not blindly go into building something.
You'd guide and advise, I guess, on where best for her to take her life. But looking on where you kind of have been and the issues and the mistakes and the trials and tribulations that you might have overcome to get to this 9-figure run rate or more than 9 figures, what does that look like? When do you want to give up at any point?
It's give up. I don't know. I've been, so this is my third company right now. And, when I was starting this business, I wanted to do something that I could, I'd be really curious about, I'd be passionate about. I would want to build something in, solve problems in that space, create a product, create a brand, create a business, stay engaged, build a great company, be in a market that is a good market, and make this potentially the last thing that I'm going to ever be involved with, right? And that can be something that you stay focused on for a very long time. You stay productive. I went for a walk yesterday with a very good friend who's also an entrepreneur. We spend time every now and then just doing this in the mornings. And he's a very successful founder. He's in all these kind of groups of exited founders and everything else. And he was, we're talking about the toll that actually exiting and then not knowing what to do kind of takes. It's, it might sound like really a first world problem, but the highest anxiety that I had was in the interim periods before committing to something. And, I've had great time kind of taking a break and enjoying life and, not having to, I don't know, do all the things that, we do. But then when it comes time to actually thinking, what is it that I'm going to do? Where does meaning come from? Once you commit to something and once you start kind of getting focused, then, of course, you have all the other stresses that you have to deal with, but you don't have this kind of existential deep questions. And I think, what am I doing? Who am I? Where am I going? You're like, what am I solving? What's burning? What am I fixing? And that kind of gets you a little bit more in the zone.
And I think to that point about the exiting piece, there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast that are scaling businesses to potentially exit, and they won't have necessarily realized that there is that what if next kind of thing. Now, when you exit your first or even your second business, and you had that kind of period, that limbo period before you started the next business, how did you come up with that new idea? Did you want to start another company, or was it just something that came to you?
So the first, and by the way, just really quickly on that, the exit piece, you should be thinking about an exit, and you should have a plan about an exit, but you should also be prepared that you're not relying or you're not hoping for an exit, right? But that's something that you need to be thinking about if you're gonna raise money from institutional investors, right? And you should be smart about that. But you might find that your best returns, what you might find for most companies, come much later in the life of the company. It takes, I don't know, I always thought, it would take about 7-8 years to get to a point where you have enough.
For some reason, people always say this figure, but I feel like any substantial business always takes like almost double that.
Yeah.
It takes so much longer than you think.
It takes, 8 years is a time to be like, I think at 8 years at that time you have a sustainable business, hopefully. Otherwise, you sometimes actually you might not. Businesses do that. You've got a good team, you've got like muscle, you have institutional memory, you've got like a lot of things, and then you starting to grow also in value, and then a 2x at that point should be, you get into that exponential kind of returns phase. But to go back to your question, so my first business was a success. That was a classifieds business powered by user-generated content. So started that, grew it, started with a friend, grew it, took it profitability, and then eventual acquisition.
What was the lead time on that? How long did it?
That took about 4 years.
From nothing to exit?
Yes.
But it's very impressive.
It was, it was a good exit. It let, our investors made a bit of money. I made some money. My second business wasn't actually a success. And in fact, after the exit of the first business, I came first to the idea that became Numan today at that point, because I was looking into how you're going to be able to use data and technology to really change the way we think and we act about our health, and really create a platform that would understand you in depth. I would be able to give you personalized interventions and recommendations that would be pharmacological but behavioral as well, and would put you on this trajectory that would be this kind of health partner that was this amalgamation of the best kind of doctors that you could find that would be there to advise you every single day, right?
Okay.
Now, at the time, I realized that actually the only way you could do this was by building a bricks and mortar kind of clinic. The only places you could do that were probably, central London or the Bay Area. And the people that you would appeal to would be a very small niche audience. Mm-hmm. But also I was kind of not really ready to start, building clinics and real estate, and I didn't want to do that stuff. So I did something else. And I was lucky enough to invest in companies like Calm.com and Secret Escapes and a few other ones. So actually between the time, so here's to answer also how you came up with the idea. So, and this is where, that's the biggest risk sometimes you have as an entrepreneur. You convince yourself as well. And then also you can stay in denial after a while because you have convinced yourself, especially also if you've raised money and you have a sense of commitment and that you have to make it work for your investors, which you should, but up to a point.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do health, and I wanted to build something that would, really improve your health and your well-being. I couldn't do that. I didn't want to do that. I couldn't figure out how to do that. That's now 2012, 2013. So I convinced myself that theoretically this is true. We built a business with another friend that was helped you connect with your loved ones through personal photos and videos and messages. And that was effectively, we could see how Facebook and privacy and kind of social media were becoming quite polluted and toxic and not really fit for purpose. But I kind of convinced myself that I was pursuing that original vision from a slightly different angle, right? Which was true, but not really. So we built a business there. We were on the right sort of, ballpark with what we're trying to do. And we had Facebook as the enemy, but we did not anticipate exactly what would happen with WhatsApp and messaging. So we're like, well, WhatsApp has 50 million members. We have an audience globally of billions. There's a market here. And then you sort of look the other way and you looked again, oh, wow, okay, 2 years have gone by. WhatsApp has 800 million members. And every person I speak to tells me, well, if I'm going to get my mother, my grandmother, anywhere to share photos, it'll be WhatsApp. That's the tool. That's what we use, right? So that was, so during that time, it would have been financially better for me to go on a beach and do nothing.
Yeah.
Rather than invest in my second business and spend 3.5 years. Because, the other investments did well. Of course, that's, ridiculous thing to say because it's hindsight,
Yeah.
100%, right? And I did learn a whole bunch of stuff from the second.
Well, that's what I wanted to tap into. So I think there's this kind of recurring thing that I've heard with a lot of entrepreneurs that number 3 is the one that really, really works. So maybe you have a first business, it goes okay, you know, there's an exit, maybe something happens. The second one, you have a bit of Icarus, you know, maybe you fly a little bit too close to the sun, you think that, you know, you're a genius now. And then the third one is you kind of have that a bit of a failure or something goes a bit wrong. And it actually teaches you all of the lessons for number 3, which then becomes the big one, which seems to be the case for you. But what lessons or what, you know, learnings did you get from number 2 that you've now applied to number 3?
So I've shared this sometimes with people that we had in the team that they were kind of stepping into joining a company at its early stages, or they were stepping into product roles. What it really boils down to is how important it is to win and how much you can't really fuck around with it. Are you okay with a bit of profanity in the podcast? And what I mean by that is you should absolutely experiment and learn and do it at pace. And you don't really know what's going to work and what's not going to work, right? So the pace of learning, the freedom to make mistakes is absolutely necessary when you're building a company and when you're building a product. It is, it's absolutely, you can't do without it. And you should be not only embrace it, almost kind of demand it.
Yeah.
Like we need to move fast, we need to figure things out, we need to learn. There is a bit of a line though at certain point where, but you need to do this with a feverish urgency to win in what it is that you're doing, to figure it out, to make it work, to beat your competition, to be there first, to do something different. And that, unless you have felt how painful failure is, and it is absolutely, it sucks big time. You really do not want to be there. And that's the thing, unless, you know, and I say this, but it doesn't really matter, to be honest with you, how much I say it. The only way, unfortunately, you learn that is by experiencing it. So that's a kind of a big thing. You do not ever want to be back in that place.
Yeah. And maybe, I don't know, is there a day that you can point to that was like, you know, a bit like the worst moment that then led to the next thing? Or was it just a series of things that happened one after the other that led to you kind of saying, this is enough, I've had enough of this thing, let's move on to the next project?
Well, we actually stayed with that idea maybe longer than we should have, but we knew the kind of the metrics, right? There was no way that you could. There was no way. I say this, actually, that's not true. There have been businesses in our space that we just couldn't figure it out ourselves. Other businesses. Also, we set out to create this, you know, global business that would be redefine the way that we engage with the people. We had like a really big level of ambition that was completely mismatched with exactly what it is that we're trying to do. And we stayed maybe a year too long with that sort of kind of mindset. And if we had stayed a year earlier saying, actually, you know what? No, we're going to make a printed outlooms business that we fully monetize and we're just going to have a profitable business. That's kind of what I mean by being clear-eyed and in denial, because you could have made that realization, well, if I'm like really brutally honest, before you started the business itself, right? It was obvious. We could see that things would not work out. Rather than try to figure out, we doubled down on doing something that had the potential to, like we went from building something completely private to something that was private with the opportunity to kind of have virality in it. The other lesson there is that this kind of sport, you should play it with in the right place. And at the time, that was the Bay Area. You need to move. You needed to move to the US.
Yeah.
Because that's where you could get enough capital to give you enough time to actually get one of those things working, right? So you had teams that They had, I don't know, 6 bullets on the chamber and bullet they hit the target, right? But we had one something, and you just can't really, you shouldn't really do that. That was, again, in hindsight, you can tell it was obvious, and you can think of many excuses why we didn't do this, even though we could have. The reality is, at some point, we realized we did fire the second bullet. We were very clear of what we would need it to be for that to have any hope of kind of working or not. We did a couple of iterations, spent 3 months. You could see that was just not going to happen. And then at that point, we realized, you know what? Now we need to end this. And again, because we're dealing with people's private data, we were quite responsible about this. So we gave people enough notice.
Yeah.
We wrapped everything, up. We didn't leave any debt. Everybody,
So it was clean.
We cleaned. It was very, very clean. And of course, I really tried to find a home for the product and for the team. And we did have a couple of acqui-hire offers, but it was the right decision. First of all, they did not want to keep the product going. They wanted to just internalize some of the technology. One of them was a massive company that makes cameras. And
maybe we've heard of them.
Yeah, you have heard of them. But they wanted to kill the product, use some of the technology, get the team, and have us working on something else for them. And, that would have been, again, you could have flip that into a narrative that you had a second exit.
Yeah.
And maybe that would have been a good idea. But if we had done that, I wouldn't be building Numan today.
No.
So, yeah.
And what's really interesting is when you were saying that monologue, you kept saying we. Mm-hmm. To find a business partner or even to go into your second business, was it with the previous business partner? Did you find a new business partner? How did you find a business?
So my first business partner was a friend who had done a business before. And again, so my journey, my confidence journey as an entrepreneur was like, I'm going to do this, but how do you do this? Then I joined a startup. All right, okay, that's
easy.
So it's not that easy, but it's not like, rocket science, as they say, right? It's mostly common sense and a bunch of stuff.
Resilience.
Resilience. So I was like, okay, I'll do it, but everybody says you should have a co-founder. And also, my friend had done a business before and he's brilliant. So let's maybe do something together. And I had that idea and we started. We didn't stay together as co-founders. We broke up after about, I think, year 3.
How was that if he was your friend? How did that go?
Difficult.
Yeah?
Very, very difficult. But it had to happen. It needed to happen. The business also was going through a bit of a crunch during that period, so it was a little bit easier. But then after that, it kind of did that. We found our footing. A few things were a B2C business, and we had just launched a B2B component as well with our technology that stabilized the business. Then we started growing. Then a few other things fell in place. So it just, it needed to happen. It also kind of worked for the person at the time. He wanted to pursue a different path in life, so it was kind of okay.
And obviously, you can have as many employees, you can have thousands of employees, but none of them will ever really understand what it's like being the founder of a business. How did you fare going from having someone that you could share all of the issues with to being, the only person that really was bearing that responsibility? Was that okay? Was that difficult?
It was, again, with getting to a point where you have a little bit more experience. With Numan, I raised a lot more money early on. That was another lesson. So I was able to bring a team. I also, our core engineering team are people that were with me in our second company. So I had somebody that I could trust for something that is really core for the company. I worked quite closely with somebody that was, one of our early, I worked out of their offices at the beginning. It's a hedge fund from somebody that I knew, and they were kind of also very helpful at the very start in terms of kind of raising capital. But again, you have also people that you can rely on a little bit as friends.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you just getting better at dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
And some people have incredible partnerships and co-founders, and that is remarkable when that happens, and it is amazing. But if you don't have that, going out and seeking and finding a person to do this is extremely hard, time-consuming, and very risky. So I didn't, need to do that. So I wouldn't spend any time trying to do that.
Yeah. And I think just looking at that point you mentioned in terms of the second iteration and indeed the third, when you were raising more money than maybe you did on the previous, what does that look like from a fundraising perspective? When should you raise money? How much should you raise, for instance? And how much is too much?
So the kind of with this, with Numan, I knew that the market that we're in is it's vast, right? So you absolutely have the opportunity of having a very large outcome. Now, okay, it is vast, but navigating your path into what you're going to do in this market is going to take time. It is a space that is, we are a business that goes direct to the patient and to the consumer. So if you're going to do that, you will need to find a distribution model. You're going to need to spend on marketing, and you are entering a space that is competitive, right? So no competition, no market. What's the cliche? In that space, you need to have enough time to be able to build a team, build a product, and also start growing. So you need to get as much capital as you can get at that point, right? Within reason. Within reason, again, depends on what it is that you're kind of doing. I worked out simply the best that I could estimate, 18 months of runway with no revenue, and just work backwards from that.
And second and third time founders are more investable than first, naturally. But even first time founders, what would you advise them on getting right to go out and find capital?
Find the best quality investor that you can find. First time founders, by the way, now, I mean, as always, brilliant people that are working on something amazing. It doesn't matter how young you are, old, what it is that you're working on. In fact, the most successful, innovative, world-altering founders are people under the age of 30, right? That's been...
What a mate.
So, no, you have other kind of attributes afterwards. But of course, people build successful businesses. Then they can start them whenever. But I think if you're building something and it's, you're blowing the doors off. It is growing great. You've got an amazing team. You are incredibly talented. Fundraising, you're gonna figure it out one way. But the conditions that described, by the way, are for the very elite, lucky 1%, sub 1% few. And then there's the rest of us, kind of, the rest of the world. For those, I would say again, if you're not that, the simplest thing you can do is start yourself. My first business, I had bought a bunch of Google stock when I was working at Vodafone. I had some Vodafone stock, I had some savings, and I put all of that into that. Google stock would probably be worth quite a lot of money now. I'm sure I would have
You've done better doing one.
But I asked from my parents a small amount of money. It was like something like £15,000. I say 15, that small amount of money. I'm fully aware for the majority of people, especially these days, this is not something you can just... I realize how privileged I was to have access to that. I paid them back, by the way, with a return, that kind of money. And then I went to friends and somebody that I used to work for at Vodafone, the CTO of Vodafone. I called him 3 years later.
Wow.
And I said, hey, I'm starting a company. And I got the first check from him. So I hustled with the people that I could get access to because, I knew nobody. And then we would go to all of those things and events and stuff like that. Many people, I remember somebody explicitly telling me, you have no chance of raising money because you've done nothing and you know nobody. So nobody will give you money.
And you thought, game on. Off we go.
Okay, well, let's see.
And where is he now?
he's not in a great place, actually, unfortunately. But it's a shame. But that's kind of a story for another time. And then the biggest check that we got, which was that was the first more institutional money for £500,000, was because my co-founder at the time was at an event and he was queuing at the line for the buffet to fill his plate. And he spoke to someone who turned out to be Hugo, who's unfortunately passed away. Housat and Hugo invested in us at the time, and off we went. So I'm not really sure if that answers the question.
Yeah.
I would have
That was the advice of just start with the closest circle and then push outwards from there. And don't think that just because maybe you don't know people who invest in VC or what have you, you can still find people that can either connect you to money or give you money directly in your first order connections.
Absolutely. And, some founders sometimes that I speak to have either a sense of shame or a sense of, I don't want to bring friends or family. And to be honest, if you can, don't bring your friends and family unless they are fully, fully aware that the most likely thing that's going to happen is they're going to lose all that money.
Yeah.
But you need to, forgo any sense of shame if you're going to be a founder first time, second time, third time, and just overcome that innate fear, discomfort of asking somebody to give you money when you have nothing. Oftentimes, you have an idea, you have a PowerPoint, and you know, again, that most likely this thing is not going to work. And you say, by the way, do you want to give me some money to do it? So, most people reasonably find that uncomfortable. But you will do so many uncomfortable things when you're a founder, and you just need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
So I want to double click on what Numan actually does and the journey that it's been on and where it's going. So, when you started to where you are now, what has changed? What are the learnings that you've overcome? And where is it going in the next 5 or 10 years?
So when, to go back to that idea that I had about creating this holistic, in a very, medical sense of the word, health partner, that would bring this combined set of interventions that would help you lead a happier, healthier, longer life. And it would help you make the most of today. So I was coming at that from a health optimization, performance, longevity kind of aspect, and help you kind of live longer. That was the idea that I had in 2013. That was the core of the vision of the business at the start. And what was really painful at the time, so Numan started as a men's health business, right? So we started, the lesson that I had learned, and there also, when I started the business, the biggest problem that I had in 2013, and again, one of the toughest things is the go-to-market and the proposition and where do you start from, right? And you could see I started the business in 2018 that Hims and Row had launched in the US. And that was a bit of an aha. I was like, okay, so actually you narrow the domain, men only, you narrow the problem, you tap into a lot of latent demand because of stigma, and you can get started. And also this is clinically a very safe place. If you're going to prescribe, if you're going to take patients on board, those conditions from a clinical perspective and from a risk perspective are a lot more simple and manageable. It also made it easier at the time to raise money because it was most investors like to pattern match, right? They going with something completely novel is amazing if you can pull it off. It is also difficult to anchor it somewhere. So we started there, but the goal and the vision and the strategy was what I just described. I didn't know at the time how difficult that would be, to be honest. Which is again not surprising. I couldn't.
Naivety is no bad thing, though.
No, exactly, because otherwise, you're like
never start.
You'd never start, or we made the right decisions at the time. So we registered the business as a healthcare provider. We built our own platform and our own stack. We didn't go with, let's start with Shopify and get traction. We invested in the brand. But it was, even internally with the team at the early stages, it was hard to get people to really buy into the bigger vision, because you had the very sensible, and also it's not just the team. If you go to somebody and say, hey, would you like me to optimize your health, to give you all of this, all of that? People today, you will find an increasing number of people that in fact will be absolutely would want to engage with that.
Not in 2018 though.
Not in 2018.
Definitely not 2013.
100%. And actually, most people want an easy way to get started. We want the maximum result with a minimum amount of effort, right? We're optimizers by nature as humans, as we should be. So we started a business as a healthcare provider, a consumer brand that was very narrowly focused on very simple problems. But then along the way, the decisions that we made put us in a position where we were building gradually this kind of stack of capabilities. So we internalized the operational part of the business. We bought another business in Sweden that we evolved into our medical platform. We started connecting to different diagnostics providers. We start building this kind of more, call them longitudinal journeys with patients, where they would come to us, we would prescribe, we would give them the medication, and then started to get more people to engage with a diagnostic product. Then, of course, COVID hit. And at that time, we were actually quite sensible about it. We didn't make any jerky reactions, we just kept going. Again, in hindsight, when you look at, well, actually, this is terrible, but it completely blocks, takes retail completely out, right? It makes people are at home. You could see all of the conditions why, as horrible as COVID was for digital companies, it was quite, a period where you saw explosive kind of growth. So we rode that wave. We raised our Series B in 2021, again, when it was a very different funding environment.
Yeah.
And
how much did you raise at that point?
By the summer of 21, we had raised 42 million pounds. And then we added another 10 million of venture debt on top of that. So that's, a lot of money. It's a very significant amount of money. So we went, we entered 21 with a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
At the time, it was a very reasonable strategy because we had access to very cheap capital. That was the expectation was that every year you would go raise money at a higher valuation and you would deploy that money to grow, right? It's not as crazy as it sounds now when you do have access to that money and you are building something. We always operated with positive unit economics, quick paybacks, strong contribution margin, improving operational efficiencies. We were never a business that, hoped to capture market and then become profitable. So we knew we were going in the right direction. But in 21, 22, the plan that we had was basically our revenue was doing that. Our losses were doing that as well. And we changed course pretty quickly in 2022, consolidated, doubled down, on our focus we had to make some painful decisions around redundancies.
Yeah.
And then set a goal to be profitable by the end of 2023, which is what we did. And then that's the other thing about tipping a little bit the odds in your favor. The biggest thing you can do is and that sounds so stupidly obvious, is just stay alive.
Yeah.
You give yourself time. So we gave ourselves time, and then we made the right investments, and you had a couple of things that changed during that time. On one hand, you had the arrival of GLP-1s and obesity, and all of a sudden you found yourself with a very well-known brand, with the infrastructure, with the capability, with the product. But also for us, what was really important, and for me, the most exciting, was obesity was the thing that let us really invest in that original vision. So with obesity, again, you can do it in two ways, right? You can provide access to the medication, and you can be an online pharmacy. And you can say, you know what, I'm going to keep my costs to the absolute minimum. I'm going to capitalize on the opportunity here. And this is a new market, and I'm just going to do that. But for us, it was an opportunity to really build that really full product experience. So we invested in our mobile app. We invested in the content and the behavioral change component and all the tools that original vision, would come together. So this pharmacotherapy and behavioral change that is personalized to you, that gives you this holistic approach to your health. Obesity was the thing that enabled us to do that, because all of a sudden you had incredible unit economics, you had fast growth, and you had the profitability and the cash flow to invest in that. So that was the transformation of the business that also enabled us to, start being a much more unisex brand, a much bigger business. But again, it was the culmination of all the things that we did before to put us in that position to fully capitalize on the opportunities.
And how's that going to compound then over the next few years, and what does that look like for Numan?
So first of all, this idea, the biggest, when it comes to your health and you want to really focus on prevention and making somebody healthier, the first thing that you can do is get them to stop smoking if they're smoking, right? And stop abusing, alcohol, drugs, whatever else they're doing.
So January must be crazy for you.
January, yes, is a big month in general for our business. But then the other thing that you can do is if they're living with obesity, help them treat that obesity. Obesity is the thing that kind of stops you from exercising. Obesity is the thing that stops you. It's kind of, people are almost on a downward spiral, and a lot of people that have been living with obesity for a very long time, they don't believe that they can change. So you're helping them transform that and change. And all of a sudden they're building healthier habits. All of a sudden they are much more interested in their overall health. So they are engaging with the platform in a very different way. Yeah. The other thing that has happened in the last 2.5 couple of years is the fact that we're starting to see AI as a real kind of tool in what we're doing, right? Now, AI, just to give you a very quick historical detour, going back to me being an engineer, which I am. The other thing that I was really, I was really into during that time was artificial intelligence in the most from a philosophical, computational, and engineering perspective. I did my after my first degree, I did I started the master's in information processing and neural networks because I was convinced that artificial intelligence would be transformative for our species, for the world.
In neural networks?
Neural networks, yeah. Which is kind of some of the technologies that are now...
Like Neuralink, for instance, and the technologies that are being used there?
In a way, no. Neural networks are basically our brain is this connection of neural networks, and our brain kind of performs computation in ways that we can estimate kind of how it works. Not estimate, we know how these computations work. So the idea in computer science was that if we recreate a model like that, so we create all these different networks, can we get this thing to do what a human brain can do? So the first things were, can we, if you throw a bunch of photos, for example, and you mark them as correct or not, the neural network will learn how to recognize whether this is a cat or, something else, right?
Such a simple way of deconstructing what early AI is as well, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So a neurological sort of pathway.
That's kind of some of the, exactly. People were trying to follow nature and learn from that.
Yeah.
Other people were trying to do it in much more kind of logic and expert systems and deterministic kind of models. Where AI is today is like a few iterations kind of beyond that, right? And at the time, this was where I'm going with this is when I was starting the business, I knew that behind everything else that we're doing, what we're building would be a very, very deep, rich data view of health as a whole. And at some point in the future, we would be able to use machine learning. At the time I was thinking of to really make personalized predictions about your health. But for me, this was like, 10 years plus, and I didn't really have any...
It was nearly 20 years ago. So 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't it? 97. Well, when you were...
No, when I was doing that, it was about 23 years ago, right? Yeah. But then when I was starting the business, I thought 2018, maybe 2028, these things will have enough data, enough that this could become relevant to us. And I didn't really have any notions that the engagement layer would be driven by AI. But when Gen AI when OpenAI released ChatGPT, again, we could see like, okay, this is really interesting. We didn't do anything about that at the beginning. We have been investing in AI, those kind of capabilities that would effectively remove friction from healthcare, because that's the biggest enemy when it comes to being healthy is the friction and the cost, of course. But oftentimes that's kind of the same thing to getting people in being healthy. So that's the kind of next transformation of the business that we're going through. I'm not really sure exactly where we're going to end up there and when, to be honest with you. We're going to be able to scale those. But that's the thing that 6.5 years in, you're now entering the phase where you are investing, like a lot of, our revenue goes back into, you can call it R&D, you're hiring people, that you're building things that are really exciting because they are new. There's no paradigm, there's no pattern. You're just kind of, oh shit, this is actually really exciting. So hopefully those will also drive outcomes, and they will drive commercial outcomes for us, health outcomes for our patients. And then when you bring all that together, you'll be able to see, oh, wow, now we can say that we are this holistic health partner that is there to help you the best decisions to put you on that completely different trajectory when it comes to your health. So I want us to be able to promise you, when you join Numan, even if you do that one thing, you increase your probability of being much healthier, living a much better life 20 years from now. That's the promise I want us to be able to make to our patients.
It's amazing. So it kind of starts with like getting rid of the bad habits, then moves to getting rid of the biggest challenges for people. Then it becomes preventative, and then, becomes something that's integrated, I guess, into your daily life eventually. And you become their GP in their pocket, the AI GP.
Exactly. It is, and the thing is, you absolutely right. The thing for me that was always crucial is for us to be led by medicine and by the application of these miracles that we have, the drugs that can really have remarkable impact in our bodies, but not only stop at that. And it is exactly like having a very enlightened, super multidisciplinary educated GP that is also a cardiologist specialist, an endocrinologist, a therapist, a sports exercise and nutrition specialist, which is of course impossible to expect from your doctor. And the opportunity for us and the challenge with the existing health systems is that we do have these expectations from our doctors. We want to be able to talk to our doctor about, I'm stressed. What could this be impacting me there? And most doctors will be like, well, stress is not good for you. But don't worry, you'll be fine with this.
It's cost prohibitive, especially, I think it's absolutely brilliant. We have obviously healthcare that's free at the point of use in the UK. And I think that long should that continue for everyone. But to actually deliver that, given that we've got aging population, more and more people in the UK, the only way to like viably achieve that is to make those doctors more efficient. And perhaps, you can be a part of that journey, which is very exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. You should come to our investor pitches and.
Well, did Apple say they said 1,000 songs in your pocket, and you're basically putting the NHS in people's pockets? It's essentially what you guys are doing.
Exactly, and the NHS, some things that the NHS does, we will never get to, right? And the NHS is world class, and we're so privileged to have access to it. My family has benefited enormously from the NHS, and we will never replace it. But the NHS shouldn't have to do all the heavy lifting from everything. And primary care shouldn't really be a replacement for A&E, or it shouldn't be a routing point to get to the specialism that you want, and a kind of a gatekeeper for everything in health, because it's just putting an unreasonable set of expectations on the NHS, and it's a shame.
Also, if we go back to the preventative side, if companies, private sector companies are able to diagnose these things earlier, and that's at the cost of the person, then that actually benefits the NHS, because you're catching those things before they become a £100,000 operation or what have you.
Absolutely.
You're catching it with, maybe slight tweaks to their lifestyle or whatever, which actually just saves everyone money.
With that, this is the tragedy that everyone knows that prevention is really how we should be addressing. It's better population health, much better, for sure. And I believe the statistic is that 98% of our national health budgets go towards cure, not prevention. Don't quote me exactly on that, but it's not far off, right? And we just have this intractable. We've backed ourselves in this very, very, very tight spot that we're in a permanent state of crisis, and there's no funding available to go into prevention in any meaningful way, because it always has to go into the things that are absolutely vital. It's fires.
Yeah.
And but we shouldn't expect that our taxes are going to pay for all of that when we can make our own decisions and invest in the things that, like you said, can make us healthier. And people in increasing numbers are doing this. So you see, the market kind of reacting to that, right? So there's a record number of people that are now going on private health insurance.
Well, this is it. I've just signed up a year ago, and this Apple Watch, the only reason I wear it is because my health insurance is cheaper if I wear this, because it monitors when I do 7,000 steps.
Yes.
That'll reduce my health insurance monthly, and it will prevent me from being unhealthy.
And it makes you cost less to the insurance company.
I'm cheap anyway.
You're on aggregate.
Exactly. So that is the reason, and that is the prevention piece, right?
Absolutely.
And people are becoming more and more aware that health is so important. But that's because there's a cultural change as well as there's a technological change, right?
Massive, yeah. Especially younger generations, their attitudes to health are completely different.
Alcohol-free, no smoking, a lot more sort of health and well-being.
I had a stat that something like 40% of 18 to 30-year-olds are not drinking anymore.
Yes.
It's like insane numbers. So like there is this massive tidal wave. I don't think the world quite realizes how much, the Gen Z population are taking their health seriously.
Massively.
It seems like it's not, maybe also you would know, but the wider world, I don't think it's quite as obvious.
I don't think it has caught up. And, Gen Zs get a lot of flack from everywhere, but it's...
no, language, you're right.
No, there's a lot of criticism for young people these days for this and that and the other, but...
might be onto something.
They do display... much healthier behaviors as a whole.
Yeah.
They do have a different set of expectations from life. It is also a reaction to the world around them. And I think it's, I'm quite hopeful for that and what it will mean or for us kind of overall being healthier in the future.
The one thing I wanted to understand is do you just have like a bunch of doctors in the office? I wanted to understand logistically, how does it work?
We do. They're not all in the office, but we have our own doctors, pharmacists, dietitians, nurses. We got about 45 people, 40 something people like that in the clinical team.
Okay. And so they are literally just receiving all of the information from the patient, making an assessment on that, and then prescribing whatever they need.
So we do what's called asynchronous consultation. This is, by the way, for most people, the journey. So you submit a bunch of answers in an adaptive questionnaire that is a medically designed questionnaire. You submit those, and it is called an asynchronous consultation. So this is a clinical term that, healthcare businesses use. That is reviewed by a person, a prescriber or a doctor, and if appropriate, they would issue a prescription, which is a repeat prescription that is dispensed by a pharmacy. If not, they will maybe, you can't get access to this medication for a number of reasons that are medical reasons. So there's some contraindications, you use some other medication, you're allergic, or you don't qualify for certain criteria. Like, for example, if you come to us for obesity treatment, we'll ask you to upload photos so that we can verify that you are at the weight that, you're telling us. And then if our clinicians need more information, they'll engage with you and they'll either call you or message you until they can make a determination whether it is safe or not for you to get access to that medication. If you come to us for hormonal treatments, like, for example, testosterone, because we do prescribe TRT for men with low testosterone, then it's a different path. You need to go into a venous blood test. So you'll have to go to a clinic, or a nurse will come to you.
Okay.
You will have a video consultation with a doctor. You will do another test, and then you'll get access to the treatment. Because TRT is much more complex and much riskier and much more serious decision. GLP-1s are pretty safe medications, so you can't do it this way and everything else that we did. Yeah. So that's how it works.
Super interesting.
That was really interesting.
Yeah.
So growing a team, irrespective of how big the business is pretty difficult. From a hiring perspective, how do you go about getting the right professionals into your organization?
So that's, that's the hardest thing. And it's also what's very exciting now for us is we've got a common friend of ours, actually, we're talking about this, about the how difficult it is when you don't have the necessary, you need great people to be able to hire great people.
That's
if you don't have great people, you might hire not so great people who then will go on to hire people that are...
It's like a rot. It spreads.
Yes. Now, I'm very proud of it's really hard to kind of change that, and we've had I'm very proud of the team I'm very proud of the team that we had since we started the business, but there was a period of time where the team wasn't where it needed to be, and we had to make changes. Our culture wasn't where it needed to be, and we had to make changes. That, during that 2021 2022 period, that was the most dangerous part of the business. Straight after a Series B, we hadn't gotten a bunch of things right, and then it was the hardest thing was to turn that around.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm super excited is that we have incredible talent density across all levels of the organization, and we're bringing in some amazing people, and also we're getting some great referrals now from the people that we have. It's a really simple equation. You need a great market, and then you need to get a great set of people, create a culture that they can do their best work, and then enough money that is either, comes from cash flow or from investment, and then time, and then this is the magic formula for success, right? That's what it boils down to. And then, of course, luck, so that you get lucky and you don't get unlucky. But if you've got all of those things, then great. So now we are at the position where we have some fantastic people, and also we're hiring for some really exciting roles in design, in product, in the research, in things that we've not had, even things that we never did before. But even some of the core of the business, we're building some genuinely category-defining things in the company right now. And we want to bring in the talent that matches that. So yeah, that's and the leadership team now is also the place where it is complete, just kind of now. And for me, that's awesome.
So if people want to get involved with Numan and prevent rather than cure and just be healthier genuinely, where can they go, Sokratis?
So they can start, first of all, with one of our diagnostic products. They can go, and now with Numan, you can get a kit at your home, and you can use a device that will draw blood from your shoulders.
2 weeks ago.
Nice.
Yeah, I ordered it. It was incredibly simple. I can sell it for you. It was great.
Go for it.
It literally, you put it on your arm, you press click, and then it kind of draws a little bit of blood. You don't feel anything. And then you just put it in the post, and then you get a super detailed report of everything. Turns out I need to drink more water. This is what it told me. So I'm dehydrated, apparently. And so I've been drinking loads of water.
That's the only problem.
That was the only issue that they did.
How do you want to do? Epitome of, health and organization. Yeah, exactly. It's fantastic.
But no, it was so seamless. And yeah, I think everyone needs to do it. And it was super cheap as well. It was maybe 60, 70 pounds, something like that. And it was so comprehensive. I was very impressed.
Fun. I'm so glad to hear that. And that's kind of for most people, that is the starting point. Go there, do a test, and then engage with our team to see if there's anything that you need support with in terms of you can connect with a GP. You can speak to a nurse or a pharmacist and get advice if you need to, and we'll point you to where you need to be. If you live with obesity, you can directly go and, you'll get access to our program. If you are a man and you have issues with your sexual health, whether it is erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation, again, we have personalized treatment plans for that. If you're bothered with your hair loss, we can help you with
I need that. I'm using Hims at the moment to spray on my the old noggin to try and go about it. Maybe
I can get your friends and family a discount code, and then maybe we can switch you over.
Look, thank you so much, dude, for coming in. I think it's some awesome business. You've got 2 customers here, a few more that are listening to the podcast.
Amazing.
But appreciate everything.
Thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.